Hello, and thank you for joining me here today at Why the Book Wins, where I compare books with their movie adaptations. My name is Laura, and today I'm talking about The Perfect Couple by Elin Hilderbrand, published in 2018. And I'm comparing it with the new Netflix show, which was released in 2024 and was created by Jenna Lamia, and the episodes were directed by Susanna Breer. And this is about a murder that takes place on Nantucket the night before a wedding, and as the cops try to solve the mystery, all kinds of family secrets are revealed. And to share my super quick spoiler-free thoughts, both book and TV show I thought were fine. I gave the book 3 out of 5 stars. Yeah, it's not one that I think you have to read, it's so good, but it's an entertaining murder mystery. So if it's available and you need something to read, then yeah, go ahead and give it a shot. I enjoyed the writing style, how we learned about so many different characters and changed perspective. And it definitely kept me on my toes trying to think of who the killer was. And then the TV show, I kind of feel the same. You can take it or leave it. If you had no intention of watching this show, I am not going to try to convince you otherwise. And yet, if you are looking for something to watch, then yeah, this show was entertaining enough and I enjoyed it. There were things about it I definitely liked. So if you just need something to watch, then yeah, this is worth the time. However, it's not one that I think you need to make the time for. And then from here on out, I will just go ahead and get into the details of the plot, which means there will be spoilers going forward. And just some general changes I want to address first. There are 2 characters whose names have been changed from book to movie. So sorry, I might call it a movie. It's a TV show. I'm just used to talking about movies. So sorry if I slip and call it a movie when I mean show. So anyway, from book to show, there are some characters whose names have been changed. So the wedding that is happening is between Celeste and Benji Winberry. In the book, her name is Celeste, whereas in the TV show, her name is Amelia. And then also, we have a woman named Featherly Dale, who is a family friend of the Winberry family. Her name is Featherly in the book, also known as Feather, whereas in the TV show, her name is Isabel. So in both cases, I will call them by their TV show names just to keep it simple. So instead of Celeste, I will call her Amelia, and instead of Feather, I will call her Isabel. So as I'm editing this video, I'm realizing that I did not stick to this. And when talking about the book, I often refer back to their book names. So just if I'm calling anyone Celeste, I'm talking about Amelia from the TV show, Celeste and Amelia, same person. And then same with Featherly. So when I talk about Feather, that is the Isabel counterpart from the TV show. I hope it's not confusing. Maybe it'll make it easier to follow because you'll know if I call her Celeste, I am referring specifically to the book. But yeah, sorry, I did not stick to calling them just by their movie names throughout this video. And as far as character goes, there are also 2 additions to the TV show, pretty prominent additions. So the Winberry family, the parents are Greer and Tag. And then in the book, there are 2 sons, Thomas, the older one, and Benji, the one whose wedding this murder takes place at. And then in the TV show, they add a 3rd son named Will, a 17-year-old boy. And he was not in the book at all. And then also in the show, we find out that Greer has a brother named Broderick. And he also is unique to the show, not in the book at all. And then one other change I wanted to address too is that in the book, the investigation takes place in only one day. They find Merritt's body that morning, they investigate it all day long, and by the evening, they have come to a decision. And so the book consists of that day's investigation and what the cops find out, while also doing flashbacks into important events leading up to the wedding day. Whereas in the show, the investigation lasts a few days, and there is a lot of drama that happens the days following the murder. But then to just move right along to the story. So there is a lot of drama in both book and movie between all of these characters. So I will begin just going through the drama each of them has going on. So beginning with the happy couple, Amelia and Benji. So Amelia works at the zoo, which is where Benji meets her. And in the book, he had been dating someone else. And he was there with his current girlfriend and her child. But then he meets Celeste/Amelia, and he just is so taken with her that he dumps his girlfriend so that he can start dating her instead. Whereas in the TV show, they do meet at the zoo, but in the show, he had not been dating someone else currently. But yeah, in the book, we see a lot of their relationship as they meet and as they start dating. And we see how in the book, she has her doubts about Benji. There are certain things about him she really likes, but then she finds him kind of condescending because the Winberry family is crazy rich, whereas Amelia does not come from a rich family. And so she feels like the way he talks about her childhood and her parents can just be very condescending, and that bothers her. And then in the book, she also talks about how like he's kind of boring in bed. But what really makes her start to second guess the relationship is when she meets his best friend, Shooter. And in the book, she and Shooter meet and they just have this instant love at first sight connection going on. And they both kind of become obsessed with each other in a way. However, in the book, she doesn't allow anything to happen with Shooter. Like, he shows up at her apartment at one point and kisses her, but she shuts it down because she's like, no, I am not going to be a cheater. I'm with Benji. You need to go. But yeah, in the book, Shooter is head over heels for her. He tells her like, I love you. I want to be the one to marry you. And the night before the wedding, he gets her alone and he tells her, I'm serious when I say I love you. So tomorrow morning, meet me at 6 a.m. and we can run away together and we can elope. And so in the book, she does want to run away with Shooter. And so she wakes up early in the morning to go meet him, when that is when she finds Merritt's body on the beach. And so finding Merritt's dead body ruins her plans to run away with Shooter. Whereas in the show, Amelia, she has her doubts about Benji, but they're kind of different. Like, we get a conversation she is having with Merritt where she says like, I want to love someone like so intensely that I would kill to be with them. And I just don't feel that way about Benji. And so she's having second thoughts about the marriage. But then also she does kind of like have a crush on Shooter, but they definitely downplay it in the TV show. Like, they are not saying I love you. Shooter is not trying to get her to run away with him. So it's not nearly as intense as it had been in the book, which in the book, I'm just like, you've had like a couple great weekends with this guy and now you're going to throw away your relationship and run away with him? Like, you don't even know him that well. And it didn't come across as like, oh, they're actually in love. It felt like they just had this attraction and maybe they want what they can't have, you know? So yeah, I wasn't quite buying this like love at first sight connection, true love that Celeste and Shooter had in the book. I wasn't really buying it. But anyway, the TV show downplays it a lot. And yeah, they have chemistry and they have, you know, this connection when they meet and they end up kissing. And Benji, this happens after Merritt's body is found though, but Benji walks in on them and then he is very upset and he breaks things off with her, but then she still stays around. And so she has moments with Benji where they kind of make amends and reconnect, but ultimately by the end of the TV show, she is not with either one and she leaves and she does her own thing. Whereas in the book, after Merritt's body is found, like, she had been going to run away. She didn't want to marry Benji. And so when she meets up with Benji again later that day after talking to the cops, she tells him like, the wedding's off, I don't want to marry you. And so Benji is very distraught about this. And so Shooter, he doesn't know about Shooter and Celeste, but Shooter sees what bad shape Benji is in and he's like, man, Benji has been such a great friend to me and I was gonna steal his bride. So I need to stay with him for now and make sure he's good. But Shooter still fully intends to get with Celeste. He's just kind of like, Celeste can be on the back burner for now, but eventually we'll be together. And that's how the book ends with them. Whereas, yeah, in the TV show, she goes off and she's not with either one. But also the TV show has this added thing where she and Shooter had seen each other before. And he's like, oh yeah, like we were on a train and a woman had dropped some beads and I went to help her gather these beads. And the only other person on the train who helped me clean them up was Amelia. And so it's kind of showing how like they're different and they're both kind, good people because they helped this woman on the train when no one else would. And this backstory of them having seen each other before, I didn't quite get the point of that, but that was unique to the TV show. Also, by the way, in the book, Celeste develops a stutter. Once she says yes to Benji to marry him, she doesn't want to marry him. And so deep down, she knows like she shouldn't do this because she doesn't love him the way she should. And so it causes her to have a stutter up until the very end. And this was not in the show. But to talk about Merritt, so she is the maid of honor, the one who ends up being killed. And she is best friends with Amelia, but she ends up having an affair with Tag, Benji's dad. And so in the book, they start sleeping together and Tag is just head over heels. Like, he is obsessed with her. He is infatuated. But then eventually it is her birthday and he buys her a ring and they schedule a hotel room and he's waiting for her in the hotel bar when he sees Thomas, his older son, and he doesn't want to get caught. So then he texts her being like, sorry, I had to go. Your present is in the hotel room. Like, see you later. And then he arrives home and then suddenly, like after this, his infatuation with her just kind of dissolves and he's just over it. And so he tells her that they're through. But Merritt doesn't want to be through because she has grown attached to him. She has feelings for him. But not only that, she also reveals at the wedding, or the day before the wedding, she tells Tag that she is pregnant. But Tag is still adamant, like, we are over. It doesn't even matter if you're pregnant, like, we are through. And so he tells her, like, tell me how much money you want and I'll write you a check and you can be out of my life. Whereas in the TV show, she and Tag are having an affair, but by the time the wedding happens, they are still very much together and they're even saying, I love you to each other. However, when she tells him she's pregnant, like, at first he seems happy about it, but then as the night goes on, he tells her, like, I can't have this going on in my life right now. And so basically in both book and TV show, she is very emotionally distraught as the night goes on because she wants to be with Tag and she is pregnant with his baby, but he does not want to be with her. And then we have Thomas and Abby. So Thomas is the older Winberry son and he is married to a woman named Abby. And by the time Benji's wedding happens, Abby is pregnant. And we find out that Thomas had been sleeping with Isabel, that family friend. However, in the book, he had been getting with Isabel since before he even met Abby in the book, but then it just continues throughout his marriage. But once Abby is pregnant, he tells her, like, this is through, we are over, I'm staying with my wife. And he also tells her, like, if you show up to the wedding, I will kill you. But then she does show up to the wedding because she is still in love with Thomas and she's very distraught over this breakup. And so she shows up even though he told her not to. Whereas in the TV show, he was cheating with Isabel, but in the show, they are still very much together. They were not trying to end things. And in fact, Thomas is also in debt to Isabel because she has let him borrow like $2.5 million. So they're having an affair and he also owes her a ton of money. And then we have Greer and Tag. So Greer is the wife. And in the book, Greer came from a very, very wealthy family. And so Tag, he had money too, but Greer is really where all the money came from. Plus, she is also a writer. She writes mystery novels. However, even though her past novels make good money, her current novel was rejected by her editor. So she has that drama going on in the book. Whereas in the TV show, Tag is the one who came from money. He was very wealthy and Greer didn't come from money at all. But she is also a writer in the TV show and her books bring in good money and she is relatively famous. And her current book, like, it's not rejected in the TV show. In the show, her career is doing great. She even has a book launch, which is happening shortly after the wedding. And like, she's having interviews with People magazine and stuff. And so even though she didn't come from money, her writing career is doing really well. But in the show, Tag, he is kind of a pothead and he's just always smoking and drinking and popping pills with Thomas. And partway through the story, Greer turns him into the police because in both book and movie, he had bought jewelry. In the show, he bought her a bracelet for Merritt. In the book, he bought her the ring. But in the TV show, Greer turns in the receipt for the bracelet to the police in order to incriminate her husband. However, I don't think she was actually wanting him to be arrested. I think she just wanted to get him tied up while she had her book launch happening because she was worried about him making a scene. However, he is released from custody sooner than she thought, and he does show up and he does make a scene. But all of this is unique to the TV show. And something else unique to the TV show is that we find out Greer had been an escort when she was younger, and that is how she met Tag. And her brother Broderick is the one, he worked with her and he would help her find customers and he would arrange the payments. And then also her brother, he's just kind of a shady person and he currently has a lot of gambling debts and like affiliation with the Turkish mob. And he ends up being $30,000 in debt, but Greer doesn't have that kind of money right now. And so she reaches out to Shooter because in the TV show, Shooter is crazy rich. In the book, he wasn't, and the TV show, he is. And so he lets Greer borrow $300,000 so that she can give it to her brother. But yeah, this is all revealed like in the last episode. And so the police find all of this very suspicious, but ultimately none of this has anything to do with the death of Merritt. Meaning like Broderick and the $300,000 had nothing to do with Merritt. And yeah, none of this was in the book. But to talk about Merritt's death now, so in the book, Abby knew that Thomas was having an affair. And so that night, Feather, who is Isabel, she was still up pretty late just hanging out with other people. And Abby sees Feather is in the kitchen with a glass of water, but she goes to the bathroom. And so Abby, she finds one of Greer's sleeping pills, which are very intense, and she puts one of them in Feather's glass. However, what she didn't know is that Feather isn't the one who was drinking the water. The water was for Merritt. And so Featherly unintentionally gives this drugged glass of water water to Merritt, who then drinks it. And Merritt, she had been upset. And so she had took the ring off that Tag had given her and threw it into the ocean. And so when she is like kind of woozy from this pill, being drugged, getting sleepy, she thinks she sees her ring in the ocean. And so she goes out to get it, when then she passes out and she drowns. And that is why she dies in the book. Whereas in the TV show, Abby is the one who puts the pill in the drink. However, she intended Merritt to die in the TV show. Like, she drugs the orange juice and then she gives it to Merritt to drink. And then once Merritt has drank it, Abby says like, oh, let's go for a swim. And while they are in the water, she holds Merritt under so that she drowns. And in the show, the reason why she wants Merritt dead is because there is a family trust, and they will get it as soon as Will, the youngest, turns 18, and he turns 18 very soon. But if Merritt has her baby, then suddenly there is another Windberry child, and that means they need to wait until this new child turns 18 to get all of the money. And not only do they need to wait 18 years, but they would also then have to split it 4 ways because there would be another child in the mix. And so she does not want to have to wait, and she does not want to have to split it with a 4th person. And so that is why she kills Merritt. And in the end of the show, Abby, the cops find her out and they arrest her and take her away. Whereas in the end of the book, the cops decide that the death was accidental and they never find out who did it. And granted, in the book, Abby wasn't trying to kill Merritt, so she like accidentally killed Merritt. And also Merritt, she's the one who chose to go into the water. And so it really was more accidental in the book. But still, Abby gave drugs to Merritt, unintentionally so. And at the end of the book, Greer realizes this because she hears Abby and Thomas arguing about Thomas's affair, and Greer puts it all together. But rather than say anything to them about it, she instead texts them being like, you need to quiet down, everybody can hear you. And so we see in the end of the book that Greer, she is going to keep the family secrets and maintain a good image. And she also wants to like recommit herself to Tag because she feels like, oh, like I've given Tag a hard time and I can be better to him essentially. Whereas in the end of the show, again, Abby is arrested. And then Greer, we also get a scene with her where she tells the family that she is tired of maintaining this facade and being someone she's not. And so she kind of does the opposite in the show where she's like, I'm not going to try to maintain an image anymore. I just want to be who I am and have it all out in the open. And it also almost seems like she and Tag are gonna take a break and separate, and who knows if they will stay together or not. But then to talk about Bruce and Karen, who I haven't mentioned at all. They are the parents of Amelia / Celeste. And in the book, we hear a lot about them. And there are even segments narrated from Karen's perspective. So we hear all sorts of details about the two of them. But in both book and show, Karen has cancer. And so she's taking Oxycontin, but she also has bought these 3 pills which she can take to end her life. And in the book, she knows, like she has a plan when she will take them after the wedding. Whereas in the show, she just says she has them as a safety net. But yeah, these pills are brought up so much in the book. And so of course you assume they must come into play, but ultimately they don't. Nothing happens with Karen's pills. And in fact, at the end of the book, Karen, she randomly is feeling really well. And so she flushes those 3 pills because 1, she's feeling good, but 2, she also is like, there's too much going on right now. She has more motivation to keep living, essentially, and everything isn't all good like she thought it was. And so she flushes those 3 pills at the end of the book, or like near the end of the book. And then also in the book, Karen and Bruce are the ones that are made out to be the perfect couple, and everybody loves them. Like Greer in the show, she is very snobby towards Karen and Bruce, whereas in the book, she was so warm and welcoming, and everybody, it's because she's dying for one, but everybody's just very kind and welcoming to Karen, and she and Bruce just seem to have this idyllic, true love relationship. However, Karen overhears a conversation between Bruce and Tag. They are both drunk, and Tag admits to having an affair and cheating on Greer, and he asks Bruce like, oh, have you ever stepped out on Karen? And Bruce says like, oh no, I've never cheated on her, but I did have an intense crush once on a coworker, and the coworker's name was Robin, but ultimately nothing happened. And Karen overhears this and she's very shocked, not necessarily because Bruce admits he had an intense crush, but because Robin was a man. And so she's like, whoa, what? My husband had a crush on a man? But ultimately, like, this had been 10 years in the past and nothing even happened between him and this guy. And so she decides in the end that, like, it's really not that big of a deal. And it's not even something I need to bring up with him. Like, I can just move on and we're still a perfect couple, basically, right? Even if they did have rough patches here and there. And that was not in the TV show. In the TV show, Tag and Greer are made out to be the perfect couple. And when they do press interviews, like the magazines frame them as being like literally the perfect couple. Whereas, yeah, in the book, it was kind of more Karen and Bruce. And while in the TV show, we find out that the fact that Greer and Tag are a perfect couple, it's all a sham, right? Whereas in the book, yeah, we find out that Karen and Bruce, they really were as genuine as we assumed they were, and they really were just as good a couple as we thought the whole time, which I was kind of disappointed by because they were just like so good. And the three of them, like Celeste, Bruce, and Karen, just had this amazing family bond. And I kept thinking like, there has to be something more. There has to be some family secret here. But no, they really were just this like sweet, wholesome family. Oh, and then also, the pills do not come into play at all in the book. Because in the book, Abby takes one of Greer's sleeping pills, and that is what she uses. Whereas in the TV show, it was Karen's pill that was used to drug Merritt. Thomas had stolen it because he steals pills, and then he didn't realize it, but Abby had then used this pill to drug Merritt. And then to just run through a couple other changes I didn't talk about yet. So in the very end of the show, Amelia lives in England, like she has moved there so she's going to be found by Benji's family. But then Greer tracks her down and she tells her that she has written a new book and she wants Amelia to read it because she says it is about Amelia. So she's like, I want you to read this and I want to get your approval. And she also kind of apologizes and is just like, sorry I was mean to you. I was jealous of you. And after you read the book, give me a call and let's get together. And this was not in the book. And also in the book, there's a backstory with Merritt about a previous job she had where her boss came on to her and then he blackmailed her into having an affair with her. And then when the wife finds out, she is furious. And then she kind of ruins Merritt's career. And so it's just all this drama. And Merritt also does not have a good relationship with her parents. She doesn't even talk to them at all. And she has a brother who she doesn't talk about. And I don't know if it was because of this incident, because the woman calls Merritt's parents and tells her what happened. But I don't know if that's what ruined the relationship or if it was ruined beforehand. But when they call the family to tell them Merritt has been found dead, the family doesn't even care. But then something else that the TV show added is this woman named May, who we find out about. She had been a tutor to Will, but then Tag starts sleeping with her, and then May gets attached to Tag, and then when he ends things, she tries to kill herself, and so then basically they buy her off and send her away. And so it was this whole drama there that was not in the book. And then there's also drama involving NDAs because Greer likes to have people sign NDAs since she is a public figure and they're a wealthy family. And this causes drama with Amelia because it doesn't sit right with her, but all of this stuff was unique to the TV show. But when it comes to book versus TV show, so in the book, I felt kind of disappointed that Merritt wasn't actually murdered in the book. Like when you're reading a murder mystery, it's kind of disappointing when you find out it wasn't even a murder after all, yeah, Abby was to blame for Merritt being drugged and she had intended it for Feather, but then Merritt going into the water, she just did that on her own. And so yeah, I just felt kind of disappointed in that reveal. So I actually preferred the movie where Abby did directly kill Merritt and I was fine with the change of her motive being she wants the family trust. That didn't bother me because yeah, I thought it made sense for the TV show. However, the TV show does add more drama than was necessary, but to be fair, the book had a lot of drama too, and all the stuff with Shooter and Celeste, which doesn't even come into play in regards to Merritt and her murder. And so I get the author and the show, they're tossing out all these red herrings, right? Here's a ton of drama, and you need to figure out which drama connects back to Merritt, And so I get why they do that. But yeah, I guess certain things, it just felt like too much in the TV show. And then again, also the fact that Bruce and Karen, I was expecting something more with them. And then her pills in the book not even coming to play, that felt disappointing too. And I get Karen's pills were a red herring, right? Trying to make you think something will happen with them, only to then subvert your expectations, and instead it is Greer's sleeping pills that come into play. But Greer's sleeping pills, I don't remember them being brought up until halfway through the book or something. Near the end, suddenly she's like, oh, I have these crazy strong sleeping pills, which I left out. And so as the reader, you're like, wait, what? This like came out of nowhere. So I didn't love that. But also, speaking of red herrings, the character of Chloe is the daughter of the police officer. And in the very first episode, we see her with like a bloody towel or something. So it's like, oh, Chloe did something. And we find out it's just that like Will, who she is kind of dating, he hurt his hand trying to shuck an oyster. And also the knife he used is found. And so there's like a bloody knife. And so when you find out like, oh, the bloody knife is just from someone trying to open an oyster, it was kind of a letdown. But then on top of that, in the book, it just made it seem like Chloe was going to have really important information. And then ultimately, she didn't really have any information at all. So that was a little disappointing. But also in the end of the book with Chloe, we get a scene where her dad, who is the police chief who has been investigating Merritt's death, he is talking to her and he says, I just want you to realize, Chloe, that every single decision you make, who your friends are, who you date, whether you decide to smoke or drink, has a consequence. I think that Merritt ultimately was the victim of her own poor choices. And I found this kind of annoying because it seems like the author is trying to like shoehorn a message into the book. And also how it's kind of like, oh, it's Merritt's own fault that she died. Like, I don't know. I didn't love it. And then also, this isn't a book aimed towards young adults. So that kind of a message, it seems like something that would be in a YA book, right? But for a book that's being read by adults, this like moral of the story just seems kind of not age appropriate, I guess, because the people reading this is kind of like, yeah, no duh. So the way this message was in the book, I didn't love. And then it also just seemed out of place in a book that's meant for adults. But even with my complaints with the show, there were things I liked. For example, it had a lot of humor, which wasn't really present in the book. Like, I wouldn't say the book was funny at all, but for the most part, those funny moments in the show really worked for me. And I also like that they just really showcased the kind of the trope of the rich, dysfunctional family who has all these secrets from each other. And we get at least one awkward dinner scene, which I always love scenes like that in movies and TV shows. And then, yeah, there's also just a number of just funny, weird family gatherings. And if anything, I wish they leaned more into this aspect of the show even more. But I also did think the performances were good and they shot it on location and you really feel the location of Nantucket in the book. So I was glad they kept it in that area for the show as well. In the show, I saw they filmed on Cape Cod, so not exactly Nantucket, but close enough. So I liked that. But yeah, my biggest complaint would be that at times I just wasn't as engaged as I would have liked, and I think that problem could have been solved had the show been like 2 hours shorter, or they could have just made this into a movie and kept all of the best parts while trimming the fat. But yeah, I wasn't attached to the book necessarily. Like I said, the book was, just fine. And so the changes they made didn't bother me in that sense. If anything, I did like some of their changes. I also liked the intro. When it has them doing the group dance, I thought that was a really fun intro to have while not being too long. But when it comes to book versus show, this is really hard. I'm tempted to say the book wins because I was more engaged throughout. But then maybe I would have been more engaged in the show had I not known who the killer was, right? But because I knew it was Abby, or I assumed it was Abby, assuming they stayed close to the book, I didn't have that keeping me engaged, being like, oh, who's the killer? Who is it? And so maybe if I hadn't read the book, I would have liked the show more. But I do like some of the changes they made, like with Abby killing Merritt in the show. I definitely preferred that. Which, by the way, a girl was found dead at your house, and yet you go through as if life is normal, like the wedding has been postponed, but then she expects Amelia to like be in the family photos and act like everything is fine, and it's like, why are you, like, it's so weird that you're expecting people to act normal when a dead body was found, right? But I guess they're, just like the rich, desensitized people who have no feelings. And that's what they were going for there. And how even when a dead body is found, you still need to present yourself like you're doing well and all is fine. But anyway, so that just seemed weird in the show. Even Amelia, like the first day she's distraught. And then after that, she doesn't seem that upset about her friend being dead. So yeah, ultimately, I will say the book wins. But honestly, like I said, the book was fine. I had my issues with it, but it was still entertaining. So yeah, that wraps it up on The Perfect Couple. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.